Hey there, this is teacher Julian from Phoebo Kids Art Academy and welcome to another amazing art class. Today we're going to be learning how to draw a mission. Now there are lots of missions in California. In fact, if you go to school in California, you probably have learned or are learning about these now. So let's go ahead and switch to my desk and I can show you what we're going to be making today. So this is the picture of the mission that we're going to be making. There are 21 missions in California. The one that we're going to be drawing today is the mission San Juan Capistrano, actually in the city San Juan Capistrano. Now I do have a little show and tell for us today. So this is one of the more iconic views from the mission, but I also have this old postcard from when my grandparents visited the mission a really long time ago. You can tell this postcard, the paper is kind of old. But you can see on here it has, the mission San Juan Capistrano and some of the ruins of it because this mission is actually really, really old. And it also says here, view of the ruins of the church with swallows swooping above. This mission is actually known for its migration of clipped swallows, which is something that we're going to draw in our picture today, along with something you can see here. Now this postcard is really pretty because it has a lot of illustrations of the mission, like the interiors, the bells and the landscaping for the gardens. That's something this mission is also known for. And here you can see the iconic view that we're going to be drawing today, that bell tower. And here's another view from one of the little corridors. Some more beautiful images of gardens throughout the mission. And then on the inside of the postcard, this huge series of pictures, it has a little statement about the mission. Very educational. So we're going to be inspired by this mission today, and we're going to make a drawing of it, again with that iconic bell tower. Now for this picture today, you are going to need some watercolor paper or just really thick paper. You can use printer paper, of course, because again, we're trying to use supplies that you have just at school. If you have watercolor paper at home, great. If you don't, try and find the thickest piece of paper you can, and that's what we're going to be using today, okay? Now, you can use any of supplies that you usually use at school for this picture and it will turn out amazing. So you can use, if you have watercolors, awesome. If you have lots of Crayola markers, you're gonna wanna use those. Colored pencils, if you got crayons, bring them over. That's what we're gonna use. You also are gonna need maybe a permanent marker of some kind. I have this one here, along with a pencil and eraser just for drawing. Without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. Now, we're going to dive right into a final draw today, so we're not really going to do a practice drawing. We're going to start our drawing right on the paper we want to do all of our coloring and fancy stuff on today. I'll try and keep this picture around so that way you can kind of see what we're going for in terms of the image. So again, I'll kind of show this for us when we need it. Now I want you guys to draw with a pencil today, but I'm going to be drawing with the Sharpie just so that you can see my lines. Pencil does not show up super well, especially when we're pressing light, so I'm going to use a Sharpie, but you use a pencil. Your first step is to turn your paper so that it is vertical, tall ways, and we're going to start by actually drawing in the bell tower. So for the bell tower, right at the top here, we're just going to draw 2 diagonal lines down. Make a shape like so. Then we're going to draw 2 straight lines down. And then 2 little diagonal lines out. Now because this is a piece of architecture, which is a building that was designed, you're going to try your best to make your lines as precise as you can. You can use a ruler if you'd like, but just be careful as you go today. Next, you're just going to draw 2 more straight lines down as best you can. Perfect. So that's going to be the bell tower, the part that's kind of sticking tall at the top. Next, we're going to draw in the roof. So you're going to go to one side, right about here, and you're just going to draw a horizontal line off the edge of your paper. Do the same thing, other side. Again, if you want to use a ruler for this project today, you absolutely can. Drawing architecture, drawing buildings can sometimes be a precise way of drawing. Next, you're going to go right here, and you're going to draw another horizontal line and another horizontal line off the edge of your paper. And by the way, since we are drawing a building today, if you ever at any point need to pause the video just to get your lines the way that you want, please feel free to do so. There is no rush. All right, before we continue on to the rest of the building, let's go ahead and add in some of the more identifying features at the top here. So what do I mean by that? I mean, we usually have like a cross on top of some of the missions. We also have a bell. Again, it's the most famous bell tower for the San Juan Capistrano mission. So we're gonna draw that in now. So for the part where the bell is, you're just gonna start maybe right about here. We'll draw ourselves a horizontal line because there actually is sort of like this horizontal line right here on the bell tower anyway. And then you're gonna draw a rainbow very thin up like this. So it's almost making an archway for that bell to swing through. For the bell, you can just draw another kind of rainbow shape, connect, and then you draw the part of the bell that's on the inside. The bell needs to be connected to the building on either side, so you're just going to draw two horizontal lines on each. That way it helps it swing back and forth. Last but not least, there's just a little part of the bell tower that's actually still a part of the building. That's just the line right here. Okay? Then we can also draw the little cross that's on the top. It's just like a letter T or a plus sign. All right, now we can kind of continue on to the rest of our building and we'll add more details in as we go. But this will kind of help us kind of see, the bell tower and everything else will sort of fall into place. Next, we're gonna draw this second story or the end of the second story of the building transitioning into the first. I'll show you which line that looks like. It's this line right here, kind of ending the second story so that way we can go to the first story and we can see those archways. So you're gonna take your pencil and you're just gonna go probably like about halfway on your paper and you're gonna draw just a horizontal line all the way across. And then we can actually draw in some of the arches. So for this, you're just gonna go right about here. And we want them all to be about the same size. You're gonna draw a curved line, and a curved line. Again, all about the same size. Great. Now below here, like I showed you in those postcards, San Juan Capistrano's mission is known for its landscaped gardens. So we're gonna draw today a little garden with kind of like this pond or this pool. They actually have a lot of fountains, so we're gonna draw that in. We're gonna start with the fountain first, and then we'll add all of that lush plant life, okay? So you're gonna go to kind of this corner of your paper, right about here, and you're gonna draw a really big curved line. And you're gonna do it once more. And that will be our fountain. Now, I'll let you decide if you want to change up the way that the garden looks. It's really up to you, but I'm going to add in some plant life now. Now you can see for the plant life here today, we have kind of like this giant bush. We have another kind of like spiky bush, maybe it's like an aloe plant. And then we have some bushes and different plants kind of along the edge here. So if you want to add in something different, please go ahead and do so. It's your garden today for your picture, so you get to choose. I'm going to add in a bush over here, kind of like what we did in the example. For that, I just did a bunch of curved lines. For the plant over here, I want it to be pretty tall, so I'm going to draw curved lines up and down and up and down. These plants are in the foreground, which means that we're going to be drawing them quite low on our paper, as you can see, and we're going to draw them really big. For stuff that's farther away, closer to the building, remember the building's pretty big, we're going to draw them a little higher and smaller. So for my bushes down here, I'm going to kind of draw a ground line for them. I don't need to make it perfectly straight because bushes, they don't have to be perfect. And then I'm going to draw a bunch of little curved lines, maybe throw in another kind of plant here and there to create the various bushes. Then I can toss in like another plant here and there. And you can make, again, you could do flower bushes. If you wanted to do something else, that's fine with me. Probably going to stick one more plant right over here. And then that will do for the garden. Again, you can add more details if you want. Let's go ahead now, once you're ready, and add in more details to the building, because right now it's looking kind of plain. We're going to need some details on like the roof, and as well, we need to kind of up the bell tower just a little bit. So for the bell tower, I'm going to kind of put it over here so that you can see. All right, as I'm drawing, we're going to add in kind of these parts of the building that are just like architectural details. So you're going to go to the side here and just draw another horizontal line with your pencil. We're going to draw another horizontal line down here. And you can kind of see I'm not making it perfectly straight, or I'm not making it perfectly a solid line. This is because it's a building, and so some of these lines are just the building parts kind of making a shape. So they're not actual hard lines in real life. You also can do this if you want your lines to look a little more interesting in your drawing too. So that's up to you. You can do a solid line, or you can make them kind of dotted like I have here. The last little line we're going to make is, again, just one of those lines that if we're drawing the building we can see, but really it's just a part of the structure that's kind of protruding out. We're also going to draw in the little shingles on the roof. We're not going to draw all these right now, but we are going to draw these curved lines down here. So start from right here on one side and just draw a couple of rainbows all the way across, and do the same thing on the other side. And you want to make them about all the same size because, again, these are all on top of a roof, all kind of fitting together precisely. Next, let's go ahead and draw some windows. For one window, we're going to go right about here and draw a square. And then we're going to add in some of the window panes. So that's just going to be 2 lines down and 2 lines across. It almost kind of looks like a tic-tac-toe square. Next, we're going to make a rectangular window. And these are windows you can actually see on the mission on the side of the bell tower that we're drawing. And for these windows, we're going to draw just a straight line down and then 3 lines across. Okay. Next, we're going to draw one last window. It's going to be the exact same one that we did at first. So you're just going to draw a horizontal line, 2 lines down, 1 across to make a square. And then you're going to draw 2 lines down and 2 lines across. All right, we're almost there. We're going to draw in just 3 little lines down here. Again, this is just a detail on the building. And then we are going to draw in those swallows, okay? Now you can decide how many swallows you want on your picture. You can have a flock of them going off this way. You could fill the sky with them. It's really up to you. But I recommend making them different sizes. Now the reason for this is if you make one look small, it makes it appear as though it is far away. If you draw them really big, it will make the swallow appear as if it is very close. Okay. Now, don't worry about these cloud details. We'll do those in our coloring steps. But with that, that is actually the last drawing step. Your first coloring step is going to be to outline all of your pencil lines until your picture looks like mine, which is done in a Sharpie or a permanent marker in this case. Now, what I want you to do is, again, pause the video to do this, and then when we resume, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we can make more of our lines stand out with just our Sharpie before we move on into some more coloring steps. So go ahead and pause the video and then resume once you're ready to move on. Now, if you're resuming the video, I'm going to be assuming that you are ready to keep going, and we're going to do some details with the Sharpie first. So what I want us to do is, you might see some of these lines here are much bigger than others. And this is, again, to kind of make a little contrast in just our line width. Now, don't worry, I'll show you this lower corner of our picture here in just a moment, but I want you to take your Sharpie and I want you to kind of give a double outline to our roof of the bell tower, just to make it stand out. I also want you to add a double outline and maybe even have the line kind of go outside of our shape a little bit for this horizontal line here next to the bell. Good job. You also can do that for this line that's down here. And we can do it to the very roof on the second story here. So you can take your Sharpie and just give a double outline to that as well. Again, stay precise, try your best. If, for example, it's kind of hard to do it in one position, what I like to do is I like to turn my paper and I like to make the horizontal line vertical for myself because it's kind of easier to hold low and go slow when you're pulling towards yourself. Okay, it's looking good. We're also going to double outline our windows so that they have kind of like the effect of there being a frame around them. Again, you can also turn your paper if it's even tricky to do small horizontal lines or vertical lines. Whatever the case, you always want to be in a comfortable drawing position, especially when you're doing work like outlining. Okay. Now, as we're working, I'll kind of tell you another little fact about the mission that we are drawing today. So this mission, like I said, it's really, really old. It actually was first built in October 30th of the year 1775, but later it was refounded on January 1st of 1776, which is the same year the United States would win its independence. So just to give you a time frame of when this was being built. Now, of course, California wasn't really a state yet, and it won't be for quite a few more years. But these missions were built by people from Spain, who are more on the western side of the now United States at the time. You'll probably learn even more about that in school too. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're also gonna double outline our archways. So you're gonna take your Sharpie, you're gonna give another outline to the archways here, again, just to help them stand out. I'm doing it for all three of them. This part I always think it requires the most concentration because outlining in a curved line, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I always have to focus really hard on these ones. I always find the straight lines easier to do. Okay, there we are. And after we add our outline to our archways, we're ready to start on some more coloring outside of outlining stuff. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna color in the insides of these little shingles on the roof here. So you can still use your Sharpie for this. It'll probably be easier to do so. And just go ahead and fill all of these little spaces in. Okay. All right, now if you go and visit this mission, like I said, some of it is in ruins. It's been rebuilt a couple times, but there was like an earthquake in 1812 that destroyed some of it. And this building structure is just really, really old. And if you live in California or know anything about California, you know that it gets a lot of earthquakes. So these old style of buildings just, didn't always stand up to the test of a horrible earthquake. That being said, there are still lots of this mission that you can still visit. They actually still hold church services at the mission. From what I understand, you can hold events there and you can even have a wedding there too. All right, Now let's go ahead and take out some Crayola markers so we can fill in more of our picture and add some more details. So I have these Crayola markers today, lots of different colors. I have a lot of the color black on the top, but we actually don't want to use that color first. I want you to take out, to begin with, an orange marker. And we're going to add in some of those little details of the shingles on the roof. All you're going to do is take your orange marker and moving in short little curved lines all over the roof, you're going to add in the roof texture. All right. Now again, depending on how many little rainbow lines you added, this part could take like no time at all. It also could take you a long time. Whatever the case, just pace yourself. There's no need to go as fast as me either. You can go at your own pace. Again, pause the video whenever you need to. If you want, you can even do some of these brown. So that way, you get just a little bit of contrast between some of them. So like I said, you can do some just orange, you could do all of them orange, or you can do some brown. If you want to do all of them brown, you can do that too. All right, next with our orange marker, we're going to go down below here, and we're just going to add some short little horizontal lines. This is just going to be for like some texture on the building. We're going to be going over this with some watercolor later, and they will fade away, which is okay. We kind of want that to happen because it's just to create like a subtle texture. It's not to like stand out entirely. Now that being said, if we do the watercolor step and a lot of yours washes away and you really, really wanted to keep them, just wait for the watercolor to dry later and then you can go over them again. All right, next we're gonna go ahead and fill in some of our plants down here. Now I'm actually gonna fill in my two plants right here and probably just do an outline for my plants in the back. But if you wanna fill all your plants in with the markers, that's fine with me. I want to use, I think, this green today, and I think I'll just use this one. If I want to make it darker, I could always add a little bit of this guy. So with my green, I'm going to go ahead and just fill these in completely, but they're nice and solid. I always recommend outlining with your marker first, before you fill in, because then you don't have to worry about making all of the sides nice and neat, because you would have done that first. This green is a little bit lighter than the green I used in our example today, which is okay. Normally when we have things that are closer to us, they appear darker and more detailed. So that's why I used a really, really, really dark green on our example. But this green is also really nice. It kind of makes the picture seem brighter. And like I said, for these back ones here, I'm probably just going to give them a little outline. And then we'll fill these in with watercolor later. Watercolor is pretty fast. So that's what we'll be using for a majority of this picture today. As well, our building, at least the second story, is mostly white, so it'll be pretty easy to fill in because we don't really have to fill in too much of it at all. Okay, I'm also going to do just a little outline on the bottom. Like I said, a lot of this color is going to blend away with the watercolor, so it's okay if we outline it and some of it will vanish. All right. One last thing we're going to do with our marker is we are going to add a little bit of color onto the bell tower right now. Now, you can actually do this with either one of two colors. You could use the color purple, I know, it sounds kind of strange, or you could use gray. And this is what we're going to do. So before maybe you decide what color you want, I'll show you what we're going to do. We're going to take our color, and you can kind of tell what it was. We're going to add some of those little brick textures onto the bell tower with the purple. And what we're gonna do is later we're gonna put a little bit of orange watercolor on top, and that's gonna make it look a little bit more like this kind of tan-ish brown while still being quite bright. Orange and purple aren't exactly complementary, but the orange that we're gonna use has a little bit of yellow in it. So that's what's gonna turn it slightly brown, which we want. With complementary colors, they are colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. So when you put them next to each other, they're very, very bright. But when you put them together, when you mix them together, they make brown, which a lot of the times is not something we really want to happen. But complementary colors, as far as making brown, they're actually quite nice, the different kinds of tones of brown that they use. So again, making lots of different little horizontal lines. You can have some of it kind of come down here. If you look at this bell tower today, you can see that some of it is not 100% pristine. Like I said, this structure has been around since the 1700s. It's very old. It's older than the entire country of the United States by at least a year. And I'm also going to add just some of these little bricks down on the very bottom, right before the second story and first story meet. And that'll be all for our markers, you guys. Next, we're going to use a little bit of color pencil. So you can break out your color pencils wherever they may be. And I want us to start with actually maybe like a dark brown, a tan, or either an orange. Whatever you've got, one of those colors is going to be perfect for us today. I think I'm going to use our orange today. And what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit of this to the top of our roof. This is just to add like a little bit of shadow. Now, normally, I would have us do color pencil last and have it on top of our watercolors. But for today, we're going to do it first because I'm not quite sure the kind of paper that you're using. So I'm not sure how brittle it will be after our watercolor step. So we're just going to do this first. Depending on the color pencil, it might even blend a little bit with your watercolor. They usually don't though. Again, it just kind of depends on what your color pencil has been bonded with for a pigment and whatever is keeping that color in the stick. And then you guys, we're going to use a dark brown color pencil. Whatever dark brown you have. You could even use orange again, or you could just use black color pencil. But you're going to add this right underneath our second story where our first story begins. There's a little bit of a shadow here in real life, so we're going to add this in now. And we can always darken it up later if we need to. Sometimes what I like to do is I like to use the color pencils to kind of sketch in where my values will be before I do something really intense like painting. That's kind of like what I'm doing today. Next, we're going to use a little bit of blue, whatever blue you like. We're not going to fill in our pond right now. Again, we're going to do that more with watercolor later. But you can add a couple of lines inside the pond to show the water coming out from the fountain. So again, go ahead and do that now. All right, so continue just adding in those lines. I'm kind of adding mine in like a curved way because in some of the fountains, they have like a center part, right? And that part is just off of our paper today. Like you're not able to see it in the picture, but I'm kind of alluding to it being there. You can also take like a dark green color pencil and you can add like some shadow underneath the bush. We'll do a little bit more of this with our crayons, but it's nice sometimes to kind of see where you want things to be. And maybe you like the color pencil more. So you can add that in very lightly. All right, now you can switch to your crayons if you have crayons. I don't have the same kinds of crayons as you guys do, but I do have these today. Now crayons are gonna work just fine in place of these. These are more like oil pastels, but crayons is what this project is made for. And what you're gonna do is I want you to find a brown crayon, any brown crayon. And you are just gonna go to the inside of your arches and you're just gonna fill them in a little bit and press lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter the closer you get to the bottom. This is kind of creating like a gradient where one color changes into the next. And we'll be going over this section with watercolor later to help it kind of achieve that effect even more. So again, crayons are going to work best for this part. Oil pastels are really similar. The major difference between them is just crayons are made with a color and wax, while oil pastels are made with a color and an oil. But they have the same effect with watercolor, where they don't mix together. Wherever you put down your crayon, it's going to stay exactly right there, even if you put watercolor on top of it. Okay. I'm going to add just a little bit more of our brown towards the tops. And then we'll be good. Like I said, you could take like a green crayon and you can add a little bit of that shading kind of towards the bottom of the grass and where the bushes meet. You could even do short little lines like so to kind of make that grassy texture. If you want to add like details onto your different plants in your foreground as well with your crayon, feel free. And that will do it for our step with our crayons. Pretty fast, right? Our last step is to use our watercolors. And for this, if you really want to get into mixing colors, you could either have like a mixing tray like I have here, but you also can just use a plastic plate that you have at home. The first color we're going to start with is we're actually going to go from bottom to top in our picture today. I have a water bucket off on the side here where I'm getting my brush nice and wet, wiping off the extra water, and I'm going to find my favorite blue, and I'm just going to fill in our water in our fountain. With watercolors, I recommend using long strokes, especially if you are using a very thin piece of paper today, like a printer paper. Be mindful and just keep an eye out for any spots where your paper starts to become a little weak. You'll know that your paper is about to tear when your paper starts to have like little kind of like white flakes on it, or it's flaking a little bit. That means the paper is kind of rubbing away and it's about to get a hole in it. So just be mindful if that starts to happen. And if it does happen, let that area rest for a little bit. Now what I'm doing is I'm picking up a little bit of brown, but my brown color is really intense. And what I'm going to do with this brown is I'm just going to take my brush. You can use a smaller brush if you have. And I'm going to add this to the edge of my fountain. Just being super careful. I'm standing my brush straight up and down so I can get the edges nice and neat. Okay. You can also add in like a little bit more of the brown color on the sides of the fountain, just to kind of make it look like it's shaded a little bit. Next, we're going to fill in our grassy area. You can do this with whatever kind of green paint you like. I like to start kind of where we put our crayon down. And I'm going to do long strokes as best I can to fill in these sections. Now I would be mindful of your plants that are in your foreground because we did those with marker, right? And our Crayola markers are water soluble, which means that if they get water on them, they are going to blend a little bit. If you don't want that to happen, just very carefully go around them. For the little plants back here though, I kind of want the Crayola to blend a little bit with our watercolor. So I'm taking just a tiny bit of green paint so that the color is lighter. I'm going over the little plants, and you can see that the Crayola has kind of blended a little bit. We'll switch back to the brown. With our brown paint, we're going to fill in our archways. And you can see as we go over the crayon that it doesn't move. The watercolor just passes over it, and the crayon stays exactly where we left it. You can also see, because of the way that we did the crayon, where we added more towards the top and less towards the bottom, that it's making that gradient that we talked about, where it looks like it's changing from a dark color into a light color. This is going to create sort of like an idea or an illusion of depth in our picture today. So that way, it kind of looks like a real building. And just paint that in. We're going to add a little bit of watercolor to our building now, the main attraction. If you have a light orange, I would recommend using that. In reality, we call this color yellow-orange because it's an orange a little bit more with yellow inside of it. If you don't have that though, that's okay. You can just continue to use brown paint, but see if you can mix a little bit more water into it to make it lighter. For our light orange, you're going to fill in the entire rest of the first floor with this color. And as we continue to work with this, you can see some of the Crayola marker has blended a little bit to make it look a little more natural. Kind of like the brick is just very gently being exposed here. We don't want it to be too harsh. We want it to be very subtle, this effect. Okay. Now for this next part, we are going to do a little effect here on the brick. Like I said, we're going to use a little bit of that yellow orange, but we really don't want a lot of it. So I'm going to pick some of that paint up, put it on my little mixing tray, or again, that can be it for you, a plastic plate. And what we're going to do is, it's not super precise, but you're just going to take this color and you're going to go atop our purple, just kind of patting it in. I mentioned that this part of the building is a little bit rough for wear here. So it's okay if it doesn't look 100% like perfect strokes. We want that color to blend a little bit. And you're going to bring this all the way up to the bell tower's top. And you can see that it's turning a little bit brown as we work. Now the areas that we placed the brick, like I said, these are the areas that we see a little bit more of that exposed interior of the brick surface. It's not 100% smooth. And we're also going to bring some of this down to where the first floor is. You can just do like one big stroke. And we're also going to put some of that color underneath the roof. So right about here. Okay. You can kind of go in patting motions around the second floor to make it look more like, again, some of that building's brick. And if you want to have a little bit more of that yellow-orange in the areas where there are purple, you can just gently take some of that paint and tap, tap, tap up on the sides. Again, having a really good control over your watercolor so that it's not too wet, but also not too dry is going to be key for this part. We're also going to make sure our brush is nice and clean, but still using that yellow-orange. Fill in the roof. And before we switch to our small brush, get your brush nice and clean. And again, using a blue of your favorite, I want you to kind of, with your brush, in circular motions or like C-shaped motions, you're going to go to the sky and kind of sketch in where you want clouds to be. Now, clouds, of course, are not perfect. They're very fluffy. So we can kind of use this technique where we're just kind of going in little circles or little C shapes to make a nice fluffy white sky. I'm probably going to switch to an even bigger brush for this part, just to make sure that my clouds are super duper fluffy. All right, that looks pretty good. You can also use a small brush to make sure that we get the sky that's on the inside of the bell tower here, where that bell is. And we can add a teeny tiny bit of color to the bell. So just putting a little bit of paint on one side and not forgetting about that center part. Our last step is to fill in our windows, and I am going to fill them in with brown. Because we used Sharpie for our windows, the window panes and the frames should be okay. They won't blend away, like our Crayola did on different parts of our picture. And with that, that is our last coloring step. Now definitely leave this someplace where it can dry because it's very, very wet, but you can also make sure that your desk is clean too. If you want to add more details, like adding lots of different colors, lots of different shadows in there, please feel free to do so, but maybe tackle that after you have got your whole paper nice and dry, okay? All right, so I hope you enjoyed our project for today, and I will see you all again next time for another art class. Bye for now.